welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really going to explore what it takes to be an effective caregiver. We're diving deep into My Turn to Care by Dr. Warwick Cooper.
Great book.
It is a great book. Get ready for some fascinating insights about, well,
Selfless service.
yeah, selfless service, spiritual resilience.
And maybe a little bit about Bangladesh and a book exhibition.
Yeah, who knew those two things could go together?
Right.
But that's part of what makes this deep dive so interesting.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we forget that caregiving, it isn't just about, like the practical tasks.
Right.
Changing the bandages, the meds.
Right. It's also about the inner strength that it takes to show up for someone day after day.
With love and grace.
That's right.
Which is not always easy.
It's not, no.
No, not at all.
You're
Especially
right.
when you're juggling
So many things.
so many things. Your own life, your own stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, so Dr. Cooper, he starts with this idea of unsung heroes in caregiving. And, I think we all know someone like that.
For sure. Someone who quietly gives and gives, they don't need a pat on the back.
They don't need the recognition.
They just do it out of the goodness of their hearts, right?
Exactly.
Dr. Cooper uses the example of Saint Francis Xavier. He was a Jesuit missionary, lived back in the 1500s.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
It is a long time ago, but he was known for his selfless service to the sick and the poor.
And what's amazing is that even centuries after his death, people were still so drawn to his example.
Really?
They even preserved parts of his body as relics.
Oh, wow.
Almost like they wanted to hold on to a piece of his compassion,
Wow. That's pretty intense when you think about it.
It is.
But it speaks to that idea that selfless service,
It lasts.
it does. It leaves a lasting impact. It's like a ripple effect,
Absolutely.
It touches so many lives.
And I think that's such a powerful message for us as caregivers.
It is.
It's not about, like we said, the accolades.
Yeah.
It's about making a difference, however quiet or small it might seem at the time.
Absolutely, yeah. And speaking of quiet acts of service, Dr. Cooper shares this quote from C.S. Lewis.
Okay.
And this really resonated with me. He
Mhm.
said, "We should act as if everything depends on us," which is a lot of pressure.
Right.
But then he says, "Let go knowing that in a deeper sense, it's not all up to us."
I love that.
Isn't that great?
It is.
It's that balance between our responsibility to show up,
To do the work.
yeah, to do the work, but also knowing that we don't have to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders.
We can't.
No, we
We
can't.
need to rely on something bigger than ourselves.
We do. And however you define that,
Right, exactly.
whether it's a higher power, the universe, the collective good, whatever resonates with you.
It's essential.
It is. It is. Because otherwise, let's be honest,
It's too much.
it's too much. Caregiving can be an incredibly heavy burden.
It can be, yeah.
So how do we find that balance between carrying our own load and knowing when to say, you know what, I need a little help here?
Well, Dr. Cooper actually, he addresses that.
Okay.
He talks about the difference between burdens,
Okay.
which are those crushing weights that we are never meant to carry alone,
Right.
and loads, which are our own personal responsibilities.
Yeah, right.
And there's no shame in asking for help with those burdens.
No,
It's a sign of strength and wisdom.
it's huge.
It is.
Okay, so then how do we do that? How do we, as caregivers, get better at recognizing
Yeah, that's the
when
quote
we
here.
need to reach out, especially as, we're so used to being the strong one.
The one everyone else depends on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one everyone else depends on.
Oh, it takes practice.
It does.
It is being honest with ourselves about our limits.
And that's not always easy.
No, it's not.
No.
But it's about recognizing that asking for help is not a failure.
No.
It's how we ensure we can keep showing up.
Right. You can't pour from an empty cup. Right.
Exactly.
And that brings us to another point that Dr. Cooper emphasizes, spiritual resilience.
So important.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. What does spiritual resilience actually look like in the context of caregiving?
Well, he draws on the work of Richard Foster,
Okay.
who talks about different types of spiritual practices or disciplines
Okay.
that nurture our inner world.
Yeah.
That connection to something bigger than ourselves.
I like that.
So Foster, he talks about inward disciplines.
Okay.
Like
Yep.
meditation, reflection, even journaling practices that help us to connect with that still small voice within.
I like that still small voice because sometimes it's hard to hear
It is.
with all the noise and everything else going on.
Exactly. And he also talks about outward disciplines,
Okay.
which are things like, acts of service, generosity, simply being present for others.
Being present, that's huge.
It is.
It's so easy to get caught up in our own heads
Right.
and not be present.
And then finally, he talks about corporate disciplines,
Corporate.
which emphasize the importance of community of
Yeah.
connecting with others who share our values.
Because we need that support.
We need it, absolutely.
We're not meant to do this alone.
We need that sense of belonging.
Yes.
And all of these disciplines, whether we practice them by ourselves or with others, they work together to build that inner strength.
That spiritual resilience.
Exactly. That allows us to navigate the challenges of caregiving with grace, even joy.
And it's not about being perfect, right?
No, not at all.
Because none of us are.
No.
It's about cultivating that inner wellspring of strength that allows us to keep going even when things are tough.
That's what will carry us through.
It is. It is. And, Dr. Cooper uses a really interesting analogy to kind of illustrate this idea of spiritual nourishment.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
He compares living a life of faith, or really just living a life of purpose, I think,
Okay.
to an air freshener.
An air freshener.
An air freshener.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
So think about it this way. Imagine you have one of those plug-in air fresheners, right?
Okay, yeah.
You can have the device plugged in,
Mm-hmm.
but if you don't refill it,
There's no fragrance.
there's no fragrance. It's all show and no go, right?
Right.
So it's not enough to just go through the motions.
Got to be more than that.
It's got to be more than that. We have to be connected to that source, whatever it is for you, to truly radiate that love and compassion.
We need to keep refilling our spiritual reserves.
We do.
And Dr. Cooper, he talks about how, for him, that means regularly engaging with Scripture.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not just about reading it.
No.
Right.
No, it's about letting it sink in.
Right. Letting it nourish you so you can then nourish others.
Exactly.
I like that a lot.
It's about letting those words guide your actions,
Yeah.
inform your choices, shape how you show up in the world.
Yeah, and it's about aligning your life with something bigger than yourself, whatever that looks like for you.
Exactly. You said it perfectly.
And that's something that Dr. Cooper comes back to again and again in the book.
And he also talks about this concept of the exchanged life, right?
Yes. Yes, he does. He draws on the teachings of Major Ian Thomas.
Another great thinker.
He is, and it sounds like it ties into this idea of surrendering to something greater than ourselves,
Absolutely.
which can be tough
It can. It can.
because we like to be in control.
We do. We like to think we have all the answers.
We do. We do. Okay, so Major Thomas, he talked about how true strength and resilience come not from our own limited energy.
Right. Like willpower alone can only get you so far.
Exactly. It's about tapping into something beyond ourselves.
Surrendering to it.
Yes. Surrendering, that's the word.
Letting go of the need to control everything.
Because we can't control everything, can we?
We can try.
We can try, but it's exhausting.
It is. It really is.
It's exhausting, and it's I don't know, it's like we're trying to run a marathon on an empty stomach.
Ooh, I like that.
We need to fuel, we need to refuel.
We need that sustenance.
We do.
And for caregivers, that refueling is essential.
It is.
We can't give what we don't have.
We can't. That's so true. And that actually brings us to a point that I found a little paradoxical at first.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Okay, so Dr. Cooper talks about how receiving is actually harder than giving.
Interesting.
Right. And it sounds weird because when I think about caregiving.
You think about giving.
Yes. You think about giving, providing support, all of that.
Right. So how can receiving be harder?
Exactly. That's what I thought. But then I started thinking about it more and I was like, you know what? He's actually onto something.
Yeah.
How often do we as caregivers really struggle to accept help?
Oh, all the time.
Even when it's offered freely.
Especially then.
Especially then, right? Because we're so used to being the strong ones.
Why are?
We're the ones with it all together. At least that's the image we project.
That's the mask we wear.
And to admit that we need help.
It can feel like a weakness.
It can. It can feel like a weakness, yeah.
But it's not.
It's a strength.
It's a strength to be able to say, you know what? I can't do this all on my own.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We're not meant to.
And sometimes receiving can be the greatest gift we can give someone else.
Oh, 100%.
Because it allows them to experience the joy of giving,
Yes.
of being there for us in a way that maybe we can't be there for ourselves in that moment.
Absolutely. It creates that beautiful cycle of giving and receiving.
It does, and it's so powerful.
It is.
And, when I think about this idea of receiving grace, of surrendering to something beyond ourselves, it reminds me of that story that Dr. Cooper tells
Oh, which one?
about his experience in Bangladesh.
Oh, yes.
Now, have you ever been to Bangladesh?
I haven't, no.
Okay, so for those who haven't read the book, Dr. Cooper was in Bangladesh shortly after it gained independence,
Okay.
which was a time of great turmoil and uncertainty, you can imagine,
I
right?
can only imagine.
And he was trying to organize this huge book exhibition at a university,
Okay.
and he needed permission from the chancellor to do it.
Makes sense.
So he goes to the chancellor, and the chancellor's like, sure, you can have your book exhibition, but you need to get approval from Abdul.
Abdul.
Abdul, who was the student body president.
Student body
The
president.
student body president.
Okay.
And, well, Abdul had a bit of a reputation.
Oh, no. What kind of reputation?
Well, let's just say people were terrified of this guy.
Oh, okay.
Like, really terrified.
Oh, wow.
They even warned Dr. Cooper.
About Abdul.
Yeah, they were like, hey, just so you know, this guy ordered the deaths of a couple of students just last week.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, talk about high pressure.
Intense.
So Dr. Cooper goes to meet Abdul, and he's understandably apprehensive, right?
Yeah, I would be too.
Right. But as he walks into the room,
What happened?
his fear vanishes
It's like that.
just like that.
Wow.
Just gone, poof.
That's incredible.
Isn't that wild?
It's like he stepped into a space of, I don't know, like pure grace.
Yes.
Where fear just had no power.
Exactly. Exactly. And he's able to, like, confidently talk to Abdul
About the book exhibition.
about the book exhibition and gets the permission he needs.
Wow, that's amazing.
Isn't it amazing? And it
Right.
just goes to show you don't have to manufacture courage or strength.
Sometimes it's just about letting go.
Yes. Letting go of the need to control everything,
Mhm.
trusting that we'll be given what we need exactly when we need it.
That's a powerful message for all of us, but especially for caregivers.
It is, because let's be real, caregiving can throw us some curveballs, right?
For sure.
There are going to be moments when we feel afraid, uncertain, maybe even completely overwhelmed.
Absolutely. Those feelings are all part of the journey.
They are, and it's okay to not be okay.
It really is.
It's so easy to get lost in the weeds, you know?
It is.
But that story reminds us that there's a bigger picture.
Always a bigger picture.
A sense of peace that's available to us even when everything feels chaotic.
Yeah. And for me, that sense of peace, that sense of shared humanity, like a shared purpose, that's often found within a community.
Yeah.
And that's something else Dr. Cooper talks about.
Okay.
The benefits of being part of a faith community,
Oh.
specifically church attendance.
Okay, and I gotta admit, this part of the book really surprised me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get the spiritual benefits, right, of being part of a community.
Sure.
But he talks about some, like, really practical advantages.
He does. He draws on some fascinating research.
He does. He talks about the work of Steve Bateman,
Okay.
who outlines 9, count 'em, 9 compelling benefits of regular church attendance.
9. Why?
9. Some of them are pretty unexpected, I'm not going to lie.
Like what?
Like, well, okay, you're ready for this. Increased intelligence.
Hold on. What?
I know.
From going to church?
That's what I'm saying. Increased intelligence.
Okay. I mean, I guess I could see how
Right.
being part of a faith community
Yeah.
could involve, like, intellectually stimulating activities.
Right. You're studying scripture, you're listening to sermons, you're debating theology.
Right. You're engaging in discussions about, like, faith and ethics and...
Big questions. It's like a mental workout. You don't even realize it.
Right. You're flexing those cognitive muscles.
Exactly. I like that. Flexing those cognitive muscles.
Got to keep them strong.
You do. You do. What about the health benefits? Because he talked about those too.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of research on that.
Okay.
Studies have shown that people who regularly attend religious services, they tend to live longer.
Really?
Yeah, they have lower blood pressure. They're less likely to be depressed.
Interesting. And it makes sense when you think about it.
It does.
The social support,
The community,
the community, the sense of purpose.
having that network, those people who share your values,
Who you can lean on.
who can offer a shoulder to cry on, a helping hand.
Exactly.
It makes a world of difference, especially when things get tough.
Speaking of tough times,
Yeah.
he also talks about how church attendance can combat delusional thinking,
Oh, interesting.
which,
Important.
important in a world that's constantly bombarding us with
Information. Misinformation.
Yes. And you don't know what's real anymore.
Exactly. And so having that grounding force,
Yes.
that community
Yes.
that can help you sort through it all.
Yes. It's like having a filter for all the noise.
That's a great way to put it.
So you're not just absorbing information passively, you're engaging with it critically.
Love that.
So we've talked about finding that inner strength,
That's spiritual resilience.
that spiritual resilience, through our own practices and also through community.
in support of others.
Yeah, Dr. Cooper also talks about this concept of spiritual direction.
Okay.
which, I'll be honest, I wasn't super familiar with.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't.
So can you kind of shed some light on what that is?
Of course. So spiritual direction, it's essentially about creating that space
Okay.
to listen to that inner wisdom.
That still small voice.
That still small voice, exactly.
Which can be really hard to hear sometimes.
It can be drowned out by everything else going on.
Everything.
And so it involves meeting regularly with someone, a spiritual director,
Okay.
a trained listener,
Okay.
who can help you pay attention to how that voice is showing up in your life.
Because sometimes we don't even know it's there.
Exactly.
It's like we're so used to the noise
We are.
that we don't even recognize silence anymore.
Right, or we're afraid of the silence.
We are.
And so spiritual direction, it provides that safe space
It does.
to explore those deeper questions.
The longings of the soul.
The longings of the soul, exactly.
That's a good one.
And it can be incredibly transformative,
And, it makes me think about Dr. Cooper's own, passion for journaling,
Yes.
which he talks about quite a bit in the book.
He's a big believer in journaling.
He is, and he should be.
40 years he's been keeping journals.
40 years. I mean, that's
Dedication.
incredible. I've dabbled,
I think a lot of people have.
I've dabbled, but I've never been able to stick with it.
It's a practice, for sure.
It is. So any tips from Dr. Cooper on how to make it stick? Because I would love to be more consistent.
Well, he talks about, finding a time and a place
Yeah.
where you can be fully present.
No distractions.
No distractions. Phones away.
Okay.
Even just 10, 15 minutes a day can make a difference.
See, that's what I need to hear because I think I get overwhelmed.
It doesn't have to be this big production.
No, and it's not about writing perfectly.
No.
It's not about being a novelist.
Get it out.
Get it out, exactly.
You have to test those emotions.
Because otherwise they get stuck.
They do.
And that's not healthy.
No.
So journaling, spiritual direction, being part of a community, and also cultivating that inner strength.
All that works together.
It does. It's all connected.
It really is.
And that self-awareness, that inner knowing, that's what allows us to show up for others, even when it's hard.
Especially then. Right. Because, let's be real, caregiving is not always sunshine and roses.
No, it's not. It's real life with all its messy complexities.
Exactly. And it asks a lot of us. But in the process, it also has the potential to transform us.
To help us grow in ways we never thought possible.
Absolutely. And, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into My Turn to Care, I keep coming back to this idea that caregiving, it's not just about the practical stuff.
It's so much more than that.
It's about cultivating that wellspring of inner strength, that resilience that allows us to show up with love and grace, even when we're running on fumes.
Because there will be days when we are running on fumes, let's be honest.
Oh, absolutely. But even then, even when it feels hard, there's beauty to be found in the caring.
There's a sacredness to it, I think.
There is, and it's in those moments of vulnerability, of admitting we don't have all the answers, that we often experience the greatest growth.
The deepest connections.
Exactly. So for anyone out there listening, navigating the world of caregiving, just know you are not alone.
We're all in this together. And by supporting each other, by nurturing our own spiritual well-being, we can find moments of grace and even joy in the midst of the challenges.
Beautifully said. I think that's a perfect place to leave it.
I think so too. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into My Turn to Care.
It's been a pleasure.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey. Keep showing up, keep caring, and keep nurturing that light within yourselves.
Until next time.